violence related to intolerance does not affect all members of victim groups in the same way. This is why the Masimanyane Women's Centre has a specific focus on violence against women. Through a right-based approach, the organization has recently aimed to build the capacity of women who have been affected by xenophobic attacks. Joining us now to tell us more about the work is the centre's executive director, Dr Lesley Anne Foster. Doctor, good morning and thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. 7
killed now, thousands displaced. We've heard some really horror stories. And I think in many ways what's happened over the last couple of weeks, and I know that you're quite active in this field, is one of the reasons behind launching a Women Against Xenophobia.
Yes. We're very concerned about the specific impact that women have in these xenophobic attacks. When men are killed, when the businesses are looted and so forth, there is a way in which it impacts on women that is invisibilized, and that concerns us a great deal. There are many rapes that are happening. There are other forms of brutality against women and girl children, which goes largely unreported. And the reason for that is that because people are undocumented, they don't have recourse to the criminal justice system. In addition, language becomes a problem if they're not able to communicate clearly what the kinds of violence is that they're experiencing. That becomes difficult. But more than that, when men are harmed and killed, they are wives, they are mothers, they are daughters, they are sisters, who feel that impact. So every time a man is killed and he's a breadwinner, that woman and her children are left extremely vulnerable. And we read many stories of that kind of impact. But this campaign is about women taking leadership on the issue. When we discussed it at initial meetings, we found that women are in communities and families, and they have a system of communication that brings forward threats of the violence or the vulnerability of neighbors and so forth. And we're looking at how we form safety networks in communities that women can lead and women can be a part of in a very significant way. We understand that the problem is political, that the response has to be political, economic and social. And we want to have a say in all of that, because as women we have a way in which we can articulate the concerns of women, of families and of entire communities. And so we want to be able to input into that at all of those levels.
Doctor, one of the things that you mentioned, and I want to touch on it because it sounds right to me, safety networks within communities that women can lead. How do we start those safety networks? Because I do think, when I think a safety network, I think it's a group of people sitting down, talking, and dialogue at the end of the day is going to be one of the ways we are going to resolve some of these issues.
Yes. We have formed a partnership with the Daily Dispatch in East London. I had a meeting with the news editor there, and the one strategy we're going to use is to hold community dialogues jointly, where one, we report on what is coming out of the communities, what kinds of information is coming out, but the community dialogues will also then lead to forums, anti-xenophobic forums at community level, because the response has to come from the ground up as much as what it comes from the political level. And these community dialogues are going to be very important in surfacing what the issues are, in being able to give us early warning systems, and also to then develop those safety networks. So there are many women in communities who are already providing services, and they can provide a service to different things like HIV patients and so forth, but they are the ears and the eyes of the community. And what we want to do is to take the information and the knowledge to the communities so that they then become the leaders within that community to stop xenophobic attacks.
Doctor, I know that you work internationally, but your base is in East London. Talk to me about education of women around their rights and understanding, because for a lot of women that play those leadership roles, it comes naturally, but there are a lot of women that could play leadership roles that don't know they can be leaders.
Yes. Well, one of the things Masimanyane has is a women's leadership program, and we work with young women and then older women. And we run these in communities across the Eastern Cape. But more than that, we are on International Women's Rights Action Watch, and we take this work into Africa. So we're the African focal point for working around women's rights. And we take that in November, we had 10 African countries come to Cape Town, and we worked with them around how to respond to attacks on women's rights, both practical and political attacks. So it's a very important part of our work, and we also advocate at the AU and the United Nations. But the critical thing here is to teach people what the human rights framework is about, what the responsibilities of the state are, because ultimately the state is responsibility for the safety and protection of its people. And we teach women at the very local level how to hold the state accountable through their local municipalities, their district councils, and so forth.
Very quickly, Doctor, very quick comment from you. We've seen a lot of movement on social media. Yeah. We're going to, I think at some point, talk to a social media expert around it. But individual people are starting to say, this is wrong. We've seen the hashtags, we are one, all of that. How important is it that we change the context of this conversation? We no longer talk about just xenophobia, but we have to talk about people's rights, and you have to stop violence against your African brothers and sisters.
Yes. Rights is a very important framework to use, and there's a very deep concern at the moment that we're making a shift away from that globally. It's not a South African or African issue. And I think that it's important because it provides us with an international set of norms and standards. That is critical for us to ensure that we respect, that we protect, that we promote, and we fulfill the human rights of every single person. There is no excuse for this kind of violence in any kind of way, and we have to stop it. Every individual has a right, not a right, a responsibility to stop that violence. I took my family over the weekend and said, we have several people, foreign nationals in our community. Just down the street we walk, the shopkeepers, people. I said, what are we going to do? We have to be the ears and the eyes for those people and ensure that they are safe at all times. And go and speak to them, ask them how they feel about this.
Doctor, we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much for talking to us. Dr. Lesley Anne Foster, who's from the Masimanyane Women's Center, talking to us just about initiatives that will be launched in the next, well, in actual fact, it has been launched, Women Against Xenophobia. You can Google and find out more about the organization and this movement.